Hello and welcome to
Absolute Game Off.
Nerd! You have your non-geek, non-nerd host, JP and Rohan. And with us today, we have Ryan Beckner, also known as Supersized Rye, which I think is a great name there. But Rohan, why don't you give him a proper introduction?
Yeah, I recently met Ryan through the Marvel Card Discord. I'd been following him on Instagram for a little bit, but I would say he is probably the world's top Juggernaut card collector. And we started talking. I heard a little bit about his backstory. It was very interesting. I wanted to hear more, and I was like, "You got to come on the show." He agreed. He is here. Ryan, how's it going? Thanks for coming on.
Good, man. Thank you guys for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I kind of had stayed in my own kind of private space for a long time before getting on social media and stuff like that with my collecting. So it's cool to be connecting and cool to be out here. So
Yeah, right on, right on. So we always start with the same exact question. We know you're a Juggernaut collector, but what is your first origin story, whether that be tied to Juggernaut or not? Like, what got you into this hobby? What started it all?
The very beginning would be to start at the very, very, very beginning. My introduction to the X-Men was through the Uncanny Toy Biz action figures in the 90s. My father was very into just the X-Men, wasn't super big into like Spider-Man or any of the more mainstream comic book characters and stuff. Bought me a lot of those figures. I probably had close to the full collection. That was pretty much the only toys I really remember playing with whenever I was younger. And my father was a big, burly military man. He was big into the Arnold Schwarzenegger era bodybuilding.
Yeah,
Might have been on steroids. I don't know for sure, but I just remember him being massive. During the early '90s there.
Did you guys watch Pumping Iron when you were young?
No, I don't think I ever saw any of that. He did most of his stuff in the garage. He had like the full garage setup, and just would go out there after he would get home and just spend a couple hours out there. But through that, as a child, you see that, and with those figures, I associated the physique the Juggernaut had with my father. He was the only character that I found within those figures. All of them were built kind of like to have like oversized muscular scale and stuff like that. But it made the most sense, like that the Juggernaut, fit the narrative of my father. So whenever I would play with my figures and stuff like that, I knew kind of like over time that Wolverine, Cyclops, and some of the other X-Men were more of the main people or whatever. But whenever I played with those toys, the Juggernaut was my main guy because I pretended that he was my father. So that created that affinity with me very young towards that character. And through that, it just kind of grew over time. I don't know how much time you guys have, but it's a long story here.
Get into it. Let's hear it.
My dad was he eventually retired from the military years later. Started working for the post office, slipped a disc in his back, and that started a pretty steep downward spiral for him with prescription drugs. That eventually took his life about 4 or 5 years later, and that was kind of the more of the pivotal moment whenever my collecting sort of began. I was never really up to that point in time. I had never really ventured into reading the comics. I had kind of after my childhood kind of put all that stuff in the past behind me. But something that happened after that kind of sparked this for me was the only cards that I ever were exposed to during my childhood. I was born in 1990, by the way, so I was a little bit. I'm 33, so I was a little bit younger than some of the people that I see come on here, or in some of the interviews and stuff like that. So I didn't really see like the 90s Impel set or any of like the Marvel Universe early sets because I was like too young really.
Mm-hmm.
The first one that I remember getting exposed to was 95 Marvel Annual. And I had my dad had started buying packs of those because they were selling them out on the naval base where we lived at actually. And so he would buy me a pack of those or whatever, and I would like pull the cards out and I would like look through the cards and stuff. And I eventually there was in that set there was actually they had chromiums, which I didn't really obviously at that age didn't really understand all the parallels and the different different versions or whatever. But there was a Juggernaut card in Annual 95, and I liked that one a lot. And my dad sort of was a little bit ahead of the curve with like taking care of your stuff and kind of got me into that whole like, oh, you can hold on to these things, take care of them. I don't know. It wasn't like grading was obviously not like a thing back then, but he was like talking about getting cases and putting the cards in and protecting them and stuff. And he actually got me one of those like, those screw down cases from the 90s.
Yeah. They're like rectangles.
Yeah, they're like huge. They're like this big, and then you would put one card in there, and then you would actually screw them closed. Like
I remember some of them. They'd be like that.
Yeah, they would be. Yeah, it would be super over the top. Yeah, just absolutely insanely over the top for those cards. But I had one of those, and I put the Juggernaut card in that one, and I don't know how it really played out, but after he passed away, I found that card in that case in his stuff whenever I was going through his stuff, and that like brought back a lot of memories for me from my childhood. And I was like, wow, this is like really special to to find this here and stuff like that. And I was at this point, time had gone on, and like I had heard more about like PSA things about like Pokemon cards with the grading of them and stuff like that coming about and becoming a thing. So sometime after that, I took that card out of that case, and I was going to save it obviously as like a memento and stuff as from my childhood and whatnot. And I ended up sending that card off to PSA, several years later, and it came back as a 10.
Hey, that thick slab.
Yeah, it's protected.
It
did its job. Yeah, and that that triggered something in me. I'm a person who, separate from card collecting or anything like that, like I like high-end products. I like luxury products. I like things that are rare, things that are exclusive. It's always just been something that's fit with my personality very well. So whenever I saw that card come back as a 10, it activated something in my brain that was like, oh, this is sick. This is cool. And I made it a goal sort of after that I was going to collect all the 90s Juggernaut cards that existed in a PSA 10. And I was trying my hardest for a long time to not go into the modern stuff, because I knew whenever I did, I was going to have all of it. I was going to have every single one. So I kept myself from going down that route for a long time. But that changed within the last year or two. And I've been on like I don't know what the right word would be for it, but I've just been picking up everything, which I knew that was going to happen for my personality type and my the way that I would want to collect, and I just dove into it, and now I'm sitting at a place where I'm only missing a couple cards. I have some of the biggest ones in the world, and it's a full blown addiction, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of like, what really the combination of the grading aspect and my personality type, I think, is what really has carried it to where it is now. And the reason that it was a Juggernaut was solely because of my father.
Mm-hmm.
There's one other thing I want to say just real quick about that too. There's some other interesting kind of like little parallels that I've thought about too, I should say I thought about in those moments too. Like at the point where I was finding that card in that big plastic case, I had read, several of I had read probably up to like 300 or something of the Uncanny X-Men at that point. And, it was an interesting like thing to see that card specifically in that moment too. Cause like here you have this character, the Juggernaut, who in regards to Charles Xavier, who's like his stepbrother, kind of turns on his own family. And the things that I experienced with my father, the person that he became whenever he was going through that addiction problem, was like he kind of turned on us, his own family. And I saw a lot of like other little like parallels or whatever you want to call those things. And whenever I started thinking about that or whatever, and that carried a little bit more weight for me whenever I wanted to start really collecting the Juggernaut stuff or for what it actually meant to me. So like it really in a way is like a homage to my dad. What I'm doing.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I was obviously very sorry to hear about your father.
Yeah.
I am curious, and so you kind of talked about your father kind of turned, once he had the addiction problems and whatnot. Has you getting into this collecting sphere, has that brought you back to the fonder memories of your dad and like?
Yeah. It's been, what it really has been more than anything. It's been like a therapeutic outlet for it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really for me. Like what it's been is it gives me something to not distract myself, because like I need to deal with those feelings and I need to deal with like the trauma of what happened in that situation. but it's giving me like an outlet, of something to occupy my time that like helps ease my mind with stuff. It just does a lot for me mentally to be able to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And it adds to my like it helps me like not have anxiety or like other internal mental health stuff. Like it's helped me a lot to be like channeling my energy into something that's positive. So
Yeah. I mean, so since you're not necessarily, and we're going to talk later about comics more,
sure,
but
yeah,
since you're not so as in tune with that side of the
yeah,
hobby
correct.
yet, have you heard of the story of the Fantast collection from last year?
Fantastic collection.
No, it's Fantast.
No, I've not heard that story.
So it's kind of a very similar parallel story, and we
Okay,
actually had Darren, who's this guy, on our show. So it was one of the biggest stories in the collecting hobby last year, in the
okay,
sense that so his dad, when they were growing up, had Asperger's, and it led him to be this kind of obsessive compulsive collector,
okay,
and he ended up amassing this insane comic collection of like 300,000 comics.
okay.
But it kind of split his family. And so he kind of, like in the way you said your dad kind of turned like this kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
turned him against his family. Anyways, his dad passed in last year, and so Darren inherited this collection of 300,000 comics that no one was ever allowed to see. And
Okay.
this turned out to be one of the most valuable comic collections in the world.
Okay. I
And
think I
so
have heard about this, but I didn't know that this was the name of this. I didn't
yeah,
know that it
and
was called
so
Phantasm.
Darren this last year has been kind of really diving in, and he's done some selling of it, but in the way that it's been like a therapeutic event for him almost to
Yeah.
like understand where his dad's mind was and kind of take him to a place that puts him at peace. So it just kind of reminded me of a very to what you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
shared. So if you get some time, it's a really great story.
Yeah, I'll check it
Darren's a
out.
great
Yeah, yeah. I'll
Darren's
absolutely
a
check it
really
out.
great guy.
Maybe like send me a link. If you have if you,
Yeah, I'll
I
send you.
wouldn't know how to. Yeah, send me the link to it. It'd be
Yeah, I
easier
will
for me.
definitely. So going back to the collecting side of things, then, so when you say you want to have it all, are you even still? So I mean, right now, Upper Deck is releasing a new set every month. It feels like. Obviously, Juggernaut's not in every one of them.
Correct, which has made it it makes it sort of doable, to be fair. Like with my
Yeah,
income and the rate in which Juggernaut is appearing in sets, it is. I mean, like to me, or for me, it's been possible. I'm a little worried the way it was the direction that, like, for example, Beginnings came out, and like Beginnings had. I'm a big fan of like one of the other series that I like a lot is the Deadly Hands of Kung Fu. That I've actually like read through pretty thoroughly. And like some of the early Marvel Premiere. I liked Iron Fist a little, kind of it. I like the character Colleen Wing a lot, which is I think it's like the storyline and like the descendant of a samurai. I like all that stuff or whatever. And so I went after like Colleen Wing had some cards in this Marvel Beginning set, and I went after some of those. But there's like 15 parallels or something like
yeah.
that, I think, in Marvel Beginnings, and so like whenever you start getting to that stage, if every set is going to have that many parallels and stuff like that, I like to grade, I'm going to be paying to grade 15 parallels, and like it just complicates the problem of what I'm trying to do a bit more. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to do as far as like moving forward with some of these sets if they are having that many parallels, but like I want to have like a start to a certain point finish for my collection as far as like what I've been doing so far. So I'm not really sure when that's going to be or where that will be, but it is coming at some point.
And how important is it to you to have, like, for example, like we all know some of these cards have very low, like we have out of 5 cards, we have out of 10
Yeah.
cards.
Yeah.
I've seen you have like a green PMG, which is an out of 10 card, and it's a PSA 10.
That
If
okay, that card specifically from that set is out of 25 though. Fleer Ultra
oh,
X-Men,
oh, okay, okay.
that set was out of 25. So that green PMG that I have in a 10 is actually out of 25. I do
Oh,
have both of the 2020 X-Men out of 10s, and I have them in a 9 and an 8. You won't be able to get those cards in a 10 though. PSA doesn't give 10s for those PMGs,
yeah, okay, that's what I was saying.
So
My question was gonna
yeah.
be like, you get one of those rare cards, and you're
Yeah,
like, it
yeah.
grades a 9. You're like, well, I gotta find another one, see if
No,
I
no,
can
no.
get a
Yeah, no,
10.
no. There is like a bit of leniency as far as like my expectations. Like I've researched it enough to be able to kind of see like you can look at the pop reports for the entire set, and see
Mhm.
like this is not really like something that they're like giving out, or like doesn't really, the cards weren't cut the right way for them to be getting these like super high grades for those. So that's something I did for that X-Men metal set, was kind of like look through all of the green PMGs and see how many there were that even graded a 10, and there's only one. It's a Warlock. But I do have a 9 and an 8, and I think that those for an out of 10 card are acceptable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Otherwise, I think you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I'd be going insane for it. Yeah.
So something I find super interesting when I'm talking to, so you'd be obviously a character collector.
Yeah.
And someone at your level where your goal is to kind of get it all.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your process. So when you kind of finished or moved on from, not moved on, but once you decided to collect the more modern stuff, what was your process of, okay, did you have like a black book that you wrote it? Like, talk to me about that.
You're gonna love this. Yeah. So I began using, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but you're familiar with Trading Card Database?
Yep.
Yeah, that is the greatest resource for card collectors, especially character collectors. I used that, pulled that up. Whenever I found that at some point in time, I can't remember exactly when it was, but then I just printed it off and put it in a binder. And I had the list of all the 90s cards in there, and I would just use a highlighter whenever I had them in a PSA 10. I've still got that binder somewhere. I can actually pull it up here if you wanted to see it. And then once I started the modern stuff, I just did the same thing. I just started adding to it.
But so I imagine with a character like Juggernaut, who's not as highly coveted as Spider-Man, that Trading Card Database may not be as up to date with everything.
No, it's pretty thorough. It's pretty thorough, man. Yeah. I don't know, like, I've never really looked into too many other characters, but like I have hardly ever, if ever, seen a card pop up that's not on there.
Oh, wow.
And if they are, it's like board game cards. It's it's stuff that like wouldn't really be part of sets, really. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty in depth, man. Like, there's not much that I honestly don't even know if I've ever seen a card that I've got not be on there, to be honest with you. Like, I mean, and I don't know, like, since I'm a character collector and I probably pay a bit more attention to it than most people, like, as soon as a new set comes out, dude, it's like, as soon as that checklist hits Cardboard Connection, somebody out there, some white knight is updating that list, and it's on there within like a couple days, and you have all the new parallels, so you know what you're looking for.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so Silver Surfer, the Trading Card Database is fairly comprehensive. I think there's a couple things missing, but like, I started collecting Thing, and I would say it's not on Trading Card Database. There's quite a bit missing. That's why I was curious about Juggernaut.
Yeah.
Are you also collecting? So, like, let's just take those 90s cards, for instance, right? There's a Juggernaut card, but then there may be like Juggernaut versus X-Men. Are you collecting? Okay, and then you want those in PSA 10?
Correct. Yeah, and I'm not far away from that either. By the way, it's one thing to have to say that you have all the cards, right? Like, to have them in my possession, and then it's another thing to say entirely like I've got these in like the highest grade that exists, which is like the angle that I'm like going for as well. But as far as where the 90s cards go, there's really not too many more that I need in a PSA 10. I mean, I have some of the hardest. I have the Deadpool Juggernaut Hollow Blast from 95, which is a hard card to get in a 10. There's just I'd have to look through through my binder exactly to see which ones there are, but there's not many that I don't have from that era.
So would you say for all these 10s you have, are you self-grading them or are you buying them graded?
That's a good, so nowadays, a lot of the ones I have, well, I shouldn't say, it's probably about, my collection is probably about 50-50 now, but that's because people started with during COVID and stuff like that, grading more Marvel stuff. There for a while, like, I mean, if you were to pull up, let's say there's like Toy Biz parallel, 1991 Toy Biz parallel Juggernaut card that was in the action figures, right?
Yeah.
If you were to pull up the population report, there is more Juggernaut cards submitted on that card than, almost as much as there is for Wolverine, and that is because of me. So like, there are certain cards that you can look through, like from that era and stuff like that, where I was like, earlier, before, like, eBay's kind of like gotten to a point where you can like really evaluate a card from the HD scans that they allow, because it allows like zooming in and for you to like be able to look very closely at it. But I would just buy like, 4 or 5 copies that I thought looked good, And then like once they got to me, I'd recheck them out, see how they actually looked, and then send them off. So if you were to go through some of those 90 sets in the pop report, you'll see that, these Juggernaut cards seem to be grading at a much higher clip than some of these other characters. So there for a while, that's the route that I was going with it. I was like, buying, a couple different copies or whatever, reevaluating them whenever they got to me, and then sending them off. But now it's got a little bit easier to pick things up because more people are grading stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
so
would you say you have a pretty solid eye? Like you have a card name, like, okay, this is a 10, that you're pretty spot on.
I would think that it is fair to say, given that I don't know if there are really anybody else in the hobby that has like as many gem mint cards of a character that I do. There could be, and they could be. I just may not have been exposed to it. I may not have seen their collection, things like that. But I mean, I've probably got over 200 tens, something like that. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I mean,
how many of those did you self-grade?
Say again.
How many of those did you self-grade?
Probably about 50% of them. Probably about 50%.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had guys on here that like have graded thousands of cards, and so like, how often are you subbing to PSA? Like, what are your submission size?
Nonstop. I have one at PSA right now for Marvel Masterpieces 2022.
So just kind of like a conveyor belt.
Yeah, it's just a conveyor belt. I have a really good relationship, so like my job doesn't really allow me to like. This is kind of rare, like to be honest. We had to schedule this kind of ahead of time and stuff like that. But like my job keeps me like I don't have like necessarily set hours that I always work. A lot of the time I'm having to stay over, things like that. But my job, it would be hard for me to try to find the time to put in a bulk sub with the amount that I usually sub whenever I do it. You're usually looking at roughly 100 cards whenever I send out a sub, right? And I have other people in the community that I've networked with that will actually send cards out for me. I pay them a little bit on top. Phil LaMonica, who's in the Facebook groups, has been very, very helpful with me in some of my modern stuff. There's also a company called Phantom Grading who I found. They're out of Arkansas, and they're like a PSA affiliate or whatever it's called. And like you send them the cards, they clean them, do all this stuff, send them to PSA, and then they come back to them, and then you pay whenever they come back to them, and then they ship them back to you. And I've had great experiences with them. They're the guys that gemmed out some of those PMGs, which is unheard of. For those X-Men sets or whatever. So like that's kind of the route that I go, a lot of the time is like once I get like a certain amount of cards that I've picked up, I just send them out in bulk or whatever. And it is just like a conveyor belt where I constantly have subs out and stuff coming back to me all the time. So.
And it's funny that you talked about that company in Arkansas that will like clean them up and things like that.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a component of the hobby that believes cards should not be altered, and then like when we talked to Ryan of RMS, he's like, "Fuck that!" Like he's if I can pull out a little bend in the corner, I'm gonna pull out a bend before I said like, and I totally agree.
Absolutely.
Like that's not ruining anything.
Yeah. I'm with that too.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So I mean, in terms of completion, I think when you shared the other day on Discord, there are 6 cards that you have left, right?
Yeah, it might be. I have to like go through my list or whatever, but there's some big ones that I know like that I'm like hunting for, just waiting for them to pop up at some point in time. And I think there might be like 1 or 2 other ones that like I always kind of forget about. Like one of them that I realized the day that I didn't list out in the Discord was the of 15 gold pin Just Go buybacks from 2016 Marvel Masterpieces. I always forget about that card. I know where one of those
the signed one
where he signed them, and then like out of 15 with a gold pin.
Yeah, your boy Phil LaMonica has got a full set of them.
Yeah, Phil's got one, and then there's a guy named Danny Simon who has a Juggernaut one as well. So I guess there's two people where I know where they are. That one is one. 2011 Marvel Beginnings Villains a hologram Juggernaut card. I've only seen one of those pop up, and I don't know if you were like paying attention to that. There was a period. It was like I think August of last year where an entire set graded by PSA of those Villains holograms went up on ComC.
Oh, I did not.
Did you follow that at all?
No.
So, as far as I understand, like it's my understanding is like if you can see Terra Peak data on eBay, then the card was paid for. Is that right? Do you have any?
Yeah, I think like if you look on 130point.com, that's not necessarily the sale actually happened, but I think Terra Peak shows confirmed sales.
Yeah,
I believe.
yeah.
I'm not 100% on that, but I think that's how it is. Yeah.
So it had to have been Steve Aoki then, or somebody that's like a secret, like because that Juggernaut card went for 5K.
Ooh.
And that's and the entire set was up. So I mean, like in all those cards, like people were all over the Facebook group saying like, "Oh, this is getting shield bid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And then all of a sudden, all that data is on Terapeak now. So like the only person, I mean, and somebody dropped like 50 grand on that set roughly, and so like
yes, Steve Aoki would be the guy. So JP, you know who Steve Aoki is, right? So he's like a big EDM DJ, or I don't know if EDM, but he's a big time DJ. So I mean, he's got millions in the bank, but he is a massive, not just Marvel card, but Star Wars cards, some sports cards. I think even wrestling cards. Like if you follow him on Instagram, he's got his Aoki's Card House feed.
Yeah.
And all last week, that original that Star Wars card you have the error of.
Mm-hmm.
So he just bought an entire set of that in PSA 10, and he posted the prices for each. And I mean, like the cheapest one is like $580, and like the most expensive one is like $78,000. Like,
yeah.
He is and I know he bought like a full set of red PMGs from one year. So there's a guy to buy.
He has the Wolverine one of ones for many of the sets, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine how much he spent on those. Like, I mean, imagine like some of those guys, like the way, how secretive they are and stuff like that. It's like he had to have paid like 50K, to get those out of those guys' hands, man. So, but to me, like. Yeah, to me, the only ones, or the only person that makes sense to have picked those cards up had to have been Steve Aoki. But yeah, that's the only copy of that card that I've seen was that one that popped up for 5K. So now that's going to make it just terrible whenever it pops up again for me to grab it, I'm sure. But that one, the Marvel Premiere 2017 Black, which was out of 5 parallel. There was one on ComC at some point in time. That's the only trace that I've seen of that one. Let's see. I have the list actually right here. Then I have the 2018 Clear Ultra X-Men. Aoki.
Aoki, yeah.
Yeah, Aoki.
If you look him up on Instagram, JP, it's Aoki's Card House.
Then 2015 green Marvel Retro green PMG out of 10. There's one on eBay for 5.5K right now. It's a BGS 8. I think that's too high for an 8.
If that was a 10, though, would you go for it?
Oh yeah, I would have bought it already if it was a 10. Well, I mean, if it's a BGS 10, that's super rare. You know what I mean? That's
like, if it was a 9.5.
If it was a 9.5, if it's 9.5, then I probably would have. Yeah, probably would have. I think for an 8 though, 5.5 is too high.
Have you at all like talked to the guy about that? Has it posted?
No, I haven't. Well, it's like. To me, whenever you operate the way that I'm operating in this space for these kind of cards, like that is a card that I anticipate will sit there for a very long time.
Yeah.
Right. Like I might be the only person in the world that would be willing to pay close to what that guy's asking for that card. Right. So it's smarter for me to prioritize other things that I think that there is a chance that I would have competition for. Whereas I can circle back to that card at some point in time whenever I'm ready to make an offer to that guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I don't think that card's going to go anywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would agree with you. There's, I mean, like again, like I said with Thing, he's not a highly coveted character.
Right.
And so when I'm collecting him, it's like almost everything is available.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I just don't want to drop all my money on it and just be done.
Yeah.
But like, there's like some big ones. It's like, oh, I don't need to buy that right now because no one is going to buy that. And the price will eventually probably drop, or I could eventually talk to this person or whatever.
Yeah. That's exactly the mentality that I have about that card specifically. Like if there's things that are up, that are like that I want to pick up, that are kind of overpriced or whatever, I've let those things kind of sit while I've done the rest of the work on the other stuff. Things that are like really big that like you're not gonna you may only get like one opportunity at, things like that, one of ones. I'm trying to work out a deal for a Julio Nar Juggernaut sketch card currently right now. I'm trying to make that happen, and like kind of like cater to whatever the seller is trying to do, because like there's not going to be a ton of opportunities to pick up something like that. Just because like people who have like the NAR, like the early, I mean, this is like Marvel Masterpiece on NAR on card stock, like those kind of things aren't going to pop up that often. So whenever it's like, something like that's major, then I try to make it a priority to take care of it right then. But there are some cases like that green PMG where it's like, I'm going to have time to be able to do that at a later date.
Yeah. What you have a few one of ones though, correct?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have
And
2 of the Juggernaut one-on-ones. He has like 6 or so. I believe it's. I could do it in my head actually. 2018's got 2. 2015's got 1. X-Men Metal's got 2. Oh, I have 7 now. Marvel Masterpieces has the amber
well,
and
so
the red.
that was where I was going with this. So 2022 Marvel Masterpieces is still a fairly new set.
Right.
How do you track when that one of one or where it is or if it gets pulled or what do you have a process for that?
I would assume that I put my name out there enough to where somebody's gonna message me about it. Now that I'm in the Discord, now that I'm on Instagram, now that I'm on Facebook groups, like I'm getting tagged and stuff almost every day, which is like kind of the way that I want it to be, so that like I have like immediate access to that stuff whenever it does pop up. I will buy the one-on-ones if they come out. I have money like ready to go on those whenever they do pop up if they are offered to me. I'm not gonna like overly stress about the one-on-ones because I like I'll like do my diligence to kind of like um how do I want to say this? Like for example, the 2015, I think we talked about this briefly, is I know where all of the Juggernaut one-on-ones are, basically. I know who has
Yeah.
them. I know
Yeah,
I
you
know
told me
who's
that.
yeah, I've researched it enough to be able to find out where exactly they are to know who has them. I put in an offer for the gold 2015 because I know where it's at. The guy said he would think about it and get back to me. I don't think that he's really gonna think about it and really get back to me. It's Alpha Cards only, who was on Instagram, who bought like a bazillion cards during the COVID. And I think that he was trying to like kind of corner the market and hope that the
Yeah.
value skyrocketed. But maybe he comes back to me at some point in time and says, "Yeah, okay, I'll take this." There's a guy who has the 2018 gold and gold PNG, which is like that's probably the holy grail given what Alan's done with that set or whatever. As far as if you were to ask like the general population of people who collect in our card space, and that guy he's not interested in selling it. And I can't blame him. You know what I mean? It's probably going to be worth like, I might even have competition on that card if it ever popped up just because of the rarity of that set. And then the other purple low series from X-Men Metal has not ever surfaced anywhere. Could be still in sealed product for all I know. But the high series,
would you be buying sealed product to find it by any chance? Or are you just like, no, that's not my game?
man, I've thought about it. I've thought about that, but just the risk reward to me is just not like, because I mean, somebody could have pulled it like a long time ago and then just like threw it away. What I mean? I know that sounds unlikely, but it's like there's just so much gray area whenever it comes to like a set that's now 3 or 4 years old. I just it would just be tough for me to justify doing that whenever I could be spending the money elsewhere on something that I definitely exactly need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to justify that to some degree. So
Yeah, no, there's that whole like throwing away concept. Like that's something I think about a lot. Like
yeah,
to me, as a Silver Surfer collector, if I had to pick one card I could have, in 1996 they had that Onslaught set, and in that
okay,
set they have a Stan Lee autograph. You could if you know
okay,
Phil's got it,
okay,
and him and Fausto are the only two people I know that have it. And supposedly there were 100 of those when that set
okay.
came out. But that was 1996, and like the card market crashed in the 90s, if you remember, right? And so
Yeah, okay.
I just wonder, like, how many of that 100 people were just like,
Yeah, yeah,
or even
exactly.
knew what they
Yeah,
had,
right, right, right.
So I totally get you on that.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. Like I would love to see that card pop up. I would love to have that one as well. But whenever it comes to the one-on-ones, I'm a bit more lax than the rest of everything else, just in the sense that like you can only do so much, right? With that stuff, you can, I figured out where they are. I talked to the people, they're not really interested in moving them, or what I'm offering on those isn't acceptable. I have a masterpiece one-on-one. I have an X-Men Metal one-on-one. Those to me are the most important sets Juggernauts have ever been in.
Yeah, I would agree.
So like, for me, it's like I can at least like justify that in my head and like not be like driving myself crazy. Like, oh, I have to have all of these one-on-ones. I would like to have all of them. I would like to have all of them, but I've got enough to where I got getting the satisfaction or the dopamine hit that I need from my collection. Like I have, two of the biggest cards that will ever exist for him.
Yeah.
So
You don't need to discuss like the specific price, but when you say like you made an offer on the gold one of one
yeah.
and this, how do you even evaluate what you're going to offer? Like, because I mean, just like the gold one of one, there's no sales data of that. You know what I mean? Like it's just
yeah, but I was able to find out. So I knew who had it before he got it. So I know how much he got it for.
Got it.
So like the guy who had the Marble Masterpieces 2020 one of one sold me his plus all of his stuff, the preliminary painting, all of his plates in a package deal. I bought his one of one 3 plates and the painting, and then he told me how much he sold that gold one of one to Alpha Cards Only for. So I evaluated that based on the information that I had, from that, and tried to make it to where it would be like appealing to Alpha Cards Only to some degree, but I at the end of the day, like I've talked to Phil about that I wasn't paying too much attention to, like I wasn't even on Instagram. I wasn't even in the Facebook groups yet whenever all of this was going on, like during COVID and stuff like that. Like my exposure to all of these like social media outlets like has not only begun like a year and a half ago whenever I was looking for I can tell you that story in a second, but yeah, Phil was like, I don't think this guy will move this card at all, but you can try, it's like, I think that this guy whether it's one guy or it's a group of guys that's doing that, they bought up all, I mean, dude, if you go through their Instagram, they have just an insane amount of cards on there, like all the PNGs from all those sets, a ton of gold 101s. I mean, all kinds of 101s are all over that page. And it's just like, like I think this guy was anticipating on the market just skyrocketing, unless it's like this person's just like a true collector. It doesn't make too much sense for them to have bought up as much product as they have if they weren't trying to like resell or corner the market or something like that. I've never talked to Alpha Cars Only. I've never like had any interactions with them, but it just looks that way to me. Like looking back on, like they don't post on social media as much anymore because the cards aren't booming as much. It's like just been like I don't know exactly what to think about that. Myself. But I could be wrong, but I just don't really know exactly what the situation will be for them moving forward, or if they'll want to start like making some money back on some of those. So
when you talked about like the Alpha Cards guy, and you were saying like Phil said, I don't think he'll ever move this card.
Yeah.
Right. When you acquire cards, are you in that space, or is there like everything's got a price, or where are you
No. My stuff, and I think it's more. I think it's different for character collectors. Like this stuff will never leave my collection until I die. Like I'm dedicated to this. This is something I put a lot of time and a lot of money into. And like there's just not anything that's gonna be able to pry it from my hands. I'll have to pry it from my cold dead hands here, But yeah, it's just for me, this is a permanence thing. You can see it in the back there. I
was gonna say, I was wondering if that thing was the case to display.
Yeah, I mean that whole space is eventually going to be filled up. That case has pretty much, well, I shouldn't say everything in there is a 10, but all the big cards that I've got are in that case. And that's a 90 card case there. So there's 100, about a 90 to 100 slabs in there. And I'm going to put one on the wall that's, hold on, this one that's closer, this wall right here. And then I have all the space across from it as well over there to, do like a whole area, which was what I plan to do, to display everything that I've got.
Yeah. You'll have a whole shrine.
Similar to, I mean, JP has like this whole setup, of space where he shows off his collection. Like it'll be, so the idea will be the same,
Yeah, no, I wait. My kid, I don't have my own room, and I have young kids, and so it's like, I can't put anything up yet because I don't want them to just like pull on it. So, but one day I'll have something similar to JP. I'm definitely JP's got all the space in the world down there. So.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's really sick.
Yeah.
I steal it from my kids, so those used to be their toy room. So,
oh
yeah. So before we got on, you were talking about you have some questions about comics, and you want to think about the centerpiece of your collection maybe being a high end X-Men 12. So what were the questions that you had?
So I've been trying to figure out what I'm gonna want to do. Like I said, I'm coming to a completion point. Depending on how the sets are looking, here in the future. As far as the way that I collect, having like, an point A, point B, and I'll have all that stuff displayed. Then maybe I'll have some binders or something. I'm not really sure. I started doing sketches a little bit, etc. But yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that's coming in the future to kind of like wrap this up is, I want to do X-Men 12, X-Men 13, and then X-Men 33. X-Men 33 was one of my more favorited books whenever I was reading through the series. It has a Doctor Strange appearance, which is a really fun, you get a lot of exposure to like the Sidorak realm. And it was just like, if I had to pick, you know what's interesting too. Sorry, I was going to say this a minute ago. I keep forgetting about this. Whenever it came to the modern stuff, I told you I wasn't going to do that. I was just going to do the vintage and PSA 10. I got exposed to the one-of-one that I have. I saw it on ComC or on eBay or somewhere. I can't remember where I saw it first, but that image is from X-Men 33. The exact image they took of the Juggernaut was from like one. I knew exactly what it was as soon as I saw it, and I was like, "Dude, man!" I was like, and that was the cascade of
catalyst.
Yeah, that was the catalyst. Yeah, that was the catalyst that ignited, my me jumping over to the modern stuff, whatever. It was, it was such a perfect combination of things. Like I knew the comic exactly. I knew the exact page in the comic that the shot was from. It was a one-of-one. It was a high-end product. It was the character that I collect. It was just a combination of things that just made it to where I was like, wow, this is so cool. And the guy had it listed for like $12,000 on ComC, which is just outrageous to me. And I just kind of followed it for a little while and just kind of watched it. And the guy went down a little bit, and the guy went down a little bit over time. Then he went down a little bit. And I actually got to where I was like, okay, like I'm going to buy this one-of-one. And then it's, and I was telling myself like, this is going to be the only one that I'm going to buy, and then we're just going to have this, and then this is going to be it. And I logged into ComC to load up my account on there, and the card was gone. The day, it was on there the day before, and the day that I'm loading up on there to buy it, the card is gone. So at that point, that is whenever I joined the Facebook groups. I started, like, hey, does anybody know anything about this? Has anybody seen this card? Back and forth. Nobody's got any idea. No one said anything. It's showing that it's sold on ComC. I'm emailing ComC like, hey, can you just confirm for me that this card actually sold? And they're like, we can't give out any of that data. I was like, well, it says on the page, like it said, yeah, until the card goes off of the website on ComC, you won't see the sales data. So it looked like somebody had bought it and it was just sitting on their ComC account. So it was a super complicated problem, and I was after it. I was like, I had to have it. And so by some weird, I found, so I could see on ComC the username of the person that had the card. They had an account on Blowout Card Forum. Their username was on there. I sent them a message, and about 3.5 months later, they responded. And I was just like, hey, I'm looking to track down this card that you had. And the guy's like, oh, I still have it. And I was like, well, on ComC, it shows that it's been transferred to somebody else forever. Yeah, it must be a mistake. I still have the card on my ComC account. And so then I talked to him in the messages or whatever, and then I just, threw an offer out at him. He's like, yeah, I'll put the card up tonight, and then make that happen. And so I was able to do it like that. But yeah, that was that card, that card forever to me will be like the most important card in my collection. And my favorite card. And that's what really started getting me to, network out and start branching out and meeting new people.
Yeah. So actually, two things real quick. So JP, you're probably not aware, ComC is just a website, comc.com. Check out my collection of cards. I can't remember.
Check out my cards is what it is. Yeah.
It's essentially like just another platform where you can buy cards on. It's a good platform to look for what you're looking for in terms of cards. But also before we branch out into that comic discussion, I think you got some cards to show. Do you have?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I pulled a couple of them here just to kind of like just show off, I guess. If you follow my Instagram, though, you'll have seen some of these. This is the glare is going to be terrible. This is a PMG PSA 10, which is super rare for the PMGs.
Yeah, super rare, yeah.
Just hardly any of these in that set. This is the low series Juggernaut. This is the one that the purple of this has never surfaced. This is the one we were talking about that that has never surfaced anywhere.
Is that one you graded yourself?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I bought that card raw and then graded it. Yeah, actually. And then this is the one that you were.
Not to cut you off, but just to like we had another someone else we interviewed was who the guys from Seattle, the father and daughter. Future
Past Vintage Collectibles.
Okay.
And, I don't know if I have a 9.8 in my collection. I have a couple newer books that probably would go 9.8, but to get 9.9 or 10 is almost like unheard of in a comic. And for you to have 100, you self-graded is just, it's hard to believe. I mean, I think that's awesome. You got a great eye is what I'm getting at, because it's just, there's so many different. A card is so much harder to grade, as we spoke about before, than a comic, because there's only 2 dimensions to it.
Okay.
So awesome.
I think the thing that's
Okay.
difficult about the card grading thing is like you could have a perfect card, but there's a factor that you can't control, which is the centering of it, right? With
Yeah,
comics,
absolutely. Yeah.
comics, it's like there are more things that can happen to a comic than can happen to a card, but they won't ding you. At least yet, they won't ding you if your comic is miswrapped or miscut or
Okay.
any manufacturing errors. You don't get dinged on. Well, actually, I should say
And I don't know why
if
is
you were
that.
to, that's just so per CGC standards, a 10.0, if there is, and there are a few, a 10.0 has no handling errors and no manufacturing errors. So that's the
Okay.
only time they will ding you on a manufacturing error. A 9.9 per their standard is zero handling errors, but it can have manufacturing errors such as the miswrap, the miscut, so
Okay.
on and so forth.
Okay.
And then from 9.8 and below, you don't get dinged for like a quote unquote error as you would in a card. Cards,
Okay.
though, I think just JP, I think why it's a factor is because cards are very simple. And if we didn't take centering into account, I think the 10 factor would be way off the deep end in terms of
Yeah,
like,
I
so it's like
agree.
they got to make it, a rarer thing to be perfect. And so I think that's why you take into account. That's my theory. I don't know if I'm right.
I mean, that makes sense. If I want it a 10, it better be perfectly centered.
Mhm.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
Especially
flaws.
because it's
Yeah.
just so small and that's all you're looking at. Like, because
Right.
it's funny, like, I mean, and Ryan can talk to this. Like, so the latest Marvel Masterpiece set has these canvas cards, and they have this like real
Yeah.
like shiny border. And some
It
of these
goes all
cards
the way
are,
around the card too,
and
all
some
four
of these
sides.
are out of 10 cards. Like, there's only 10
Yeah.
of this parallel. And I've seen people post these out of 10 parallels of this. And because of that border is thick and it goes all the way around, you can tell easily if it's set or not. And there
Oh,
are
yes.
some that are just like
Horrible.
cattywampus,
Yeah.
horrible.
Horrid.
And it's
Yeah.
like, this is an out of 10 card, and it's like literally pushed all the way up into one quarter, and it looks terrible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, I remember someone on Discord
Thank
posted
God
like,
Juggernaut does not have one of those too, because I'd be
yeah, like
losing my mind right now too. Yeah.
I remember someone on Discord when the set first came out, like, this card just sold for $8,000, and it was a Spider-Man canvas. I
Yeah.
don't remember
Yeah.
which color it was, but it was like literally so badly off-centered, and it's just
I
like,
believe
who
that
did
was a
this?
green. I believe it was a green too.
Yeah,
It was an out of 10 green. But yeah, it was
yeah.
just. Yeah, I've been. I mean, have you gotten your hands on any of the ambers yet?
No, I mean, to be perfectly fair, I haven't collected any of the Marvel
Okay.
Masterpieces
Okay.
22A because I mean, Surfer and Thing, there's only just a couple of cards in there,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
two, I've just found that like it just seems like the price keeps dropping until it goes to e-pack, and so
Right.
like that's
Right.
kind of what I'm waiting for.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a completionist like you, so I have no
Yeah.
problem
Yeah,
waiting.
yeah, yeah. It's smarter too, it is smarter, it's better financially, I just view it as like um if I'm gonna have like some of those ones that are extremely rare, like up tens, printing
Mhm.
plates, things like that, it's like if these are up there, I'd
Yeah,
rather
those cards,
just
if they're
for
up there,
peace
you
of
gotta
mind.
go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You gotta
exactly.
go.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
gotta
yeah.
go. Like that's just
Yep.
the name of the game. And
Correct.
I've,
Yep.
because I do both cards and comics, like it's okay for me not to have it if I can't
Right.
afford, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah.
because I have other things that I want to collect. So for me,
Right.
it's a little different. Yeah.
Well, I'll continue here with these a little bit. This is the one you were talking about. This is the green PMG of
Yeah.
10. This is probably I shouldn't say the most expensive one, but this would be like the non one of one. This would be like the most expensive card I have here. For this one to be in a 10 is unheard of. This entire set of PMGs only has 3 10s, and this is one of them.
Mhm.
So, which is pretty insane. Um, this is a cool one. I mean, this isn't like anything super great, but this is the jambalaya. These cards are like die cut. They're a bit different.
Yeah.
This one's in a 10.
What year is that
Um,
one from?
2018, Clear
Okay.
Ultra X-Men. Yeah. So that one's pretty cool to have in a 10 as well, since a lot of those cards that have like the kind of rounded edges or that are die cuts like that have a hard time grading in a 10. And then here's the two big boys here. This is the 2020 Marvel Masterpieces Red Spectrum one of one.
Yeah.
This one's in an 8. These getting these one of ones in a 10 would be close to impossible. I would say this has the one of one on the back. I don't know if you'll be able to. There we go.
Yeah.
See it pretty well. Where it says one of one. I'm sorry, over on this
Yeah,
side.
it's right there.
One of
We
one.
can see it.
Yeah. And then this is the card I was talking about, the one that I had to hunt down through ComC. This is the X-Men Metal purple
Yeah.
one-on-one. Just love that art, man. I just think it's
Yeah,
so cool
great.
that they have the vintage Juggernaut look on
Yeah,
there.
the Silver Age art is my favorite. So yeah.
Yeah, just a great card. Really, 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 really cool. You can see the one-on-one here on that one.
Yeah.
I got one
Right.
other cool thing to show you here too. This is from the Marvel Beginnings, most recent set. I don't know if you paid attention to these, but
Oh
these are
yeah,
the
the
comic
booklets.
clippings, lineage
Yeah.
booklets. They've got like comic clippings from some of the old Juggernaut appearances in the books. These are numbered to 5 in this set. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on there clearly.
Yeah.
Yes, this one's 5 of 5. Sorry, it showed up
Nice.
for a second there, but yeah, I actually had 2 of these of the 5.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's actually a guy who like sort of casually collects Juggernaut a little bit. He's nowhere near the same like
Level.
completionist mentality as me, I guess. I don't want to like sound like derogatory towards his collection or anything like that. So I want to choose the right words. His name's Richard. He lives in Australia. We have a really, really good relationship. We talk about cards all the time, Juggernaut cards. And I'm going to actually trade him one of those for something that he's got. So that's really cool.
Nice.
So
are you trading for one of the few cards that you have missing?
Well, it's not missing. It's he has a Platinum Portraits PSA 10.
Dude, that's one of my favorite inserts. I love.
Yeah, it's a
that.
really, really cool card. I have one. It's a PSA 9. I have. What's crazy is I have almost the entirety of the inserts from that set, the 2020 X-Men set, in PSA 10, which is actually unheard of as well. I have the purely periodic in PSA 10, which those cards were cut pretty poorly. So that was like, I mean, if you were to look, I think that might be one of 3 or 4 purely periodic PSA 10s. I will then have the Platinum Portraits. I have to go back over there and look and see, but yeah, basically the only one I'm missing at that point from the inserts would be the Blast Furnace from that set, and then eventually I'll have to try to locate that one and find that one. But yeah, it'll be really cool to it'd be really cool to have all the inserts from that set in a PSA 10. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, what I was gonna say was the Planet Metal from that set. I have all of those in a 10 as well. The gold, the of 15 gold, the copper, the that's the
Platinum
other one. So
and silver.
yeah, correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, which is really cool as well.
Yeah.
So
nice. Yeah. So yeah, why don't we kind of jump into that comic that you wanted to talk
about? So as much as I would love the Pacific Coast West 9.8 pedigree X-Men 12 to pop up somewhere that sold for $50,000 in 2012, I don't think that's realistic for that one to pop up somewhere. I don't know if there's a big collector. I'm sure there's huge on the comic side of stuff, since there's way more money in it. I'm sure there are just whale collectors out there that have this stuff just stored away, But there's 2 9.8s, there's a few 9.6s, and then there's 34 9.4s. There's a Bowling Green pedigree comic up on eBay right now, 9.4, and then there's a signature series Stanley 9.4 up on eBay right now as well, which that 9.4 is the highest signature series copy of that comic ever. If I was going to go a route to buy a high-end copy of that book, what's the most intelligent, or what's the most respected view, safe as well, also given all the stuff that's been going on with CGC, with the slabs and the people that were
so first off, I'll say one thing too. One thing you will know about comics, now that specific pedigree one I can't speak specifically to, but with comics, unlike with cards, everyone has a price.
Okay.
Right? There are no quote unquote black hole collectors, I'd say, in comics.
Okay.
Even if you wanted an Action Comics one, we could find one for you within a month if you had the money. Let's just say, right? So it's unlike with cards, even these low census books, you can get. It just may cost you, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't ever have to think this will never come up, because there is a price for everything if you can find it.
Okay.
And so that's just one thing. In terms of CGC's latest scandal, now we will never know, just because they would probably never divulge the full, nor do they even probably know the full details of every book that was potentially compromised. But X-Men 12, honestly, I've not seen it. It's not in the genre of books that have been compromised.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay.
And then in terms of pedigree,
modern books.
No, I mean I think there is
modern.
one. I mean there is an AF. There is one AF-15 on the book, I think, on the list. But for the most part, it's Bronze Age and up. And the Bronze Age ones are like the Hulk 181 that have a Marvel value stamp or something like that. So in terms of X-Men 12, I don't think you need to worry about that, at least at the moment, unless like the scandal further blows up. I don't think you need to worry about that. When it comes to pedigree, do you understand like what pedigrees are?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And so there are definitely some like the Mile High or the Okajima or the Promise collection where you are going to pay a fairly hefty premium on top of what the cost would be if it was not a pedigree.
Right.
However, there are a handful of pedigrees where that premium is not going to be so significant.
Okay.
So to be honest, when you mentioned a couple pedigrees that had the X-Men 12, I had never seen an X-Men 12 pedigree. I would say because it's a Silver Age book, though, it is, if you do find a pedigree, it's highly likely it's going to be that super high grade.
Yeah.
And then, just so you're aware, and when you brought it up before we got on, I was just like, oh, it's funny because just this week there is a 9.4 on Instagram through a dealer that I know for $10K. So, I mean, depending on what your budget is kind of what you're going to be going after. I will say in terms of the signature series, and we've talked about this a lot in our show.
Yeah.
And that's a Stanley signed one, I assume.
Correct.
Probably. Yeah. So one thing to note, I would only recommend to someone collecting comics to do a signature series book if they are similar to you in the sense that they're going to get it and they're never going to let it go. It's going to go with you till you die, because there are a lot of comic collectors that despise.
Yeah, that's what I was picking up from your guys' previous episodes I was seeing there. Yeah.
If you have that idea, like no book is, there's always an evolution of collecting comics where like, I wanted this book and now like, I don't need it as much anymore. I'm going to use it to sell to then be able to get this bigger book.
Right.
So that may not be the case for you, but if it was, I would just always say like, I wouldn't buy the signature series because your pool of potential purchasers will shrink because of the people that don't like the signature series. But again, if it's something for you and it means something to you and it's for your collection forever, I think signature series is a great way to go.
Okay. What's the grade on that signature series?
9.4.
And that's the same on the pedigree is 9.4.
Yeah, no, I think you said the pedigree was 9.8.
No. Well, there is a 9.8, but that's what I was saying, that the one that is a 9.8, I would love for that one to surface somewhere.
Got it.
There's two 9.8s that exist of that book. One of them is the specific West Coast pedigree, and I know that because it was on Heritage Auctions, and I'm able to see see the information on it. There is a 9.4 Bowling Green pedigree that's available as well. That's the other one I was talking about.
28,000.
You do know on Heritage, you can also make offers on books that have sold, like potentially like that. Yeah, so like for example, like if you search Batman 1, it will pull up a list of Batman 1s that have sold on Heritage. And there'll be a button there that says make an offer to that, and it'll go to the previous owner. So you can see if that pedigree one, if you do want to spend that much, if you want to go that route, that is something that you can do.
Okay.
And then again, like I'm pretty sure you're aware in terms of like, pricing increase from 9.4 to 9.6 to 9.8 is going to be exponential.
Yeah,
exponential, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of best way to go about it, I mean, I always think like Instagram is the best place to buy comics because you're going to avoid the fees and the taxes and the shipping costs, because usually the prices you get are all in. However, the 9.8 probably won't. It's rare that like it's hard to buy a $50,000 book on Instagram. Granted, it does happen.
Yeah.
So at that level, you're probably better off looking at your Heritages and your Comic Link, Comic Connect. Are going to have a probably better chance of finding it on there.
Okay.
And then you're also going to want to think with those sites that there's going to be a buyer's premium attached to it, depending on the site you're on, or some kind of fee. I mean, what do you envision? Like, would you be happy with a 9.4? Would you be happy with a 9.2?
I wouldn't know. I mean, if a 9.4 is available, then I wouldn't be happy with a 9.2. That's like, it's like if I was like, I've got a pretty substantial amount saved up to try to do that. I don't know, like this sale was made for that comic in like 2012 or something like that. So like I'm imagining that, trying to like put into perspective like where an offer would need to be at for it to be realistic for the person who has that book per se. The other thing too is like, you know, as you were saying, like I would probably have to hunt it down as opposed to it popping up somewhere. And I just like haven't like, I've been so focused on the cards and stuff like that I haven't really like put in the effort to really track down exactly where it is. But I also don't want to do that in the sense and like not be right at the point where I'm ready. You know what I mean? I don't want to like get somebody's attention and be like, okay, now that I know where it is, I'll let you know whenever I'm ready to try to make this purchase. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's a hard gray area for me to really be able to evaluate because like I don't really know like with the cards, it's relatively easier to kind of gauge roughly what you would think somebody would want to take for it because like I mean it's cheaper for one, but it's like I've been able to figure out like this sold for this, this sold for this only within a couple years, whereas like by the time that I would if I'm reaching out to this person now, this is almost like 10 15 years later or 10 11 years later at this point, than whenever it was sold last. So it's like I don't know how to like know what would be a fair offer to even send that person, if that makes sense, right? So
yeah, the thing of it is with Juggernaut as a villain, right? So you have to try to find a comparable villain in in X-Men or in Spider-Man that's 9.8 what it sold for recently to try to compare the two.
Okay.
So that's probably the best option I would think to try to get an idea of what to actually ask for. And as I look at this 9.4, the Bowling Green, I don't know if you're familiar with cleaning and pressing, but that book's a 9.4. It's an older CGC slab.
Yeah.
And they were tougher back then on grades. So I don't know if you can bump it to
not only tougher, not as many people were cleaning and pressing wasn't really a thing then.
Okay.
So
okay.
what JP
buy
was
that
getting
book
at,
and then you could clean and press that and probably bump it to a 9.6, maybe a 9.8. I don't know if you can get it 2 grades up. I'd have to really look at the book, but they were, like he said, more stringent. No one really cleaned and pressed back then.
Okay.
So
okay.
And it does say it's from my comic shop. So, and they're taking best offer. So you could probably call them up and see if you can work it. I don't know if you can work a deal outside of eBay and save them some of those fees and get it for.
Well, yeah, if the owner on eBay is My Comic Shop, go to mycomicshop.com. It'll be cheaper on their website already. Because it's minus the eBay fees. Right. The other thing too, you have to think about, right? Like it's kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier with that, like that 5.5K PMG that's sitting on eBay that you're not worried about.
Oh yeah.
Right. There isn't going to be a super lot of people that are going to be after it. Like I wanted X-Men 12. I can't afford a high-end one, but like even if I did, like it's not where I would choose to spend that amount of money.
Yeah.
So the people that you're going to be competing against for that specific comment is a rare person that is someone that is a X-Men run collector and is wanting to fill out that Silver Age run, but then also has the added caveat is that they got money and they want a high-end run collector. Like they want a X-Men 1 to 100, all 9.0 and up, right? There are very few of those. And so like, for example, I would tell you like this 9.4 that's on Instagram right now for $9,999. I mean, don't feel bad, especially, and that's what I like about Instagram is like, you can actually have conversations with the people versus like on Heritage, it's a lot harder to facilitate a back and forth. So with you could legitimately throw just to start the conversation, like $8,000. At that comic, and they'll be like, no, that's too low, but you'll get a sense of like what they may take potentially, right? My instinct tells me that 9.4 at 10K is not going to go anywhere anytime soon because the people that want that book at such a high grade is pretty rare, and so it's like it's not something that's going to get snapped up quickly.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
The other thing too you want to consider, villains compared to heroes, prices are a lot more volatile, right? Especially when the market booms, like villains will jump and drop a lot more than a standard hero will. Like hero comics, like the superhero first appearances are much more stable than the super villain. Like
Okay.
Dr. Doom, Fantastic Four #5, is the most coveted villain first appearance in Marvel Comics.
Okay.
Right? I mean, outside of like Red Skull, because his first appearance is in Captain America 1, so you can't really count that.
Yeah.
But in a sole first appearance, it's Fantastic Four #5. That book, even though it is like the best Silver Age villain book, you could still see like that price has just gone up and down depending on like, Doctor Doom is going to be in a movie. No, it goes up, and now, now it's 2 years up, and now it goes down, right? Like,
right.
So like you could definitely take your time, and like I said, by all means, lowball this offer. If they say no, just like keep it in your back pocket and like keep seeing what else is out there, because like the market does move on villains, I would say. So you could potentially find one that kind of comes down. So it's not something you need to be in a rush. Again, unlike with cards, when we talked about like when that 1 of 1 comes up, when that plate that comes up, it's there. You got to go because you may never get a shot again.
Correct. Yeah.
In comics, you will always have another shot. There's always another one that will come around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Another thing too, like, I mean, this may go without saying, but like, my kind of like my fear a little bit of it is like, if I was to pull the trigger on a 9.4 and then a 9.6 pops up on eBay 5 months later, then I'm going to be in this spot where it's like, well, I wish I just bought this one instead, whereas if I could like figure out where the 9.8s are and then like kind of like, see that those are like, they're asking like an unrealistic amount of money for them, then I would be like mentally fine with trying to find a 9.6 at that point, if that makes sense. Like it's the unknown of it that bothers me about it, like, whereas like if I, pay 10K or whatever it would be for a 9.4, and then, 5 years later, one of these somebody passes away and one of these 9.8s pop up somewhere on an auction site, or whatever. And it's like, I would rather try to start at the top and see what the options are and then work my way backwards from there.
If you want to start at the top, and we can continue this discussion offline, I can point you to a few people. Because again, with the Instagram, like you're able to be connected to a lot of people, and just like you were doing on Discord and on Facebook, putting yourself out there. There are a few, and like we've had on the founder of Comic Connect, we've had the founder of the head of Comic Link. Like I can connect you with those guys. There's another dealer I know that potentially could have. He's a guy. There's a guy I know named Jordan. He's Semperfi Comics. He just did an entire run of X-Men in 9.0 plus.
Okay.
And he could have an idea of where 9.8 may be. But again, it's a function of like talking to these guys. Those are the 3 guys I would think about and be like, hey, I'm really interested in a 9.8. Because like Vince from Comic Connect, for example, like he may not have one for sale right now, but he may be like, if there's one I see, I can connect the dots here, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah, if you any connections you want to, I mean, like I don't. It would depend on what exactly they were asking, on those for me to be able to like say like right this exact moment I could do it. But in the future, within the next like couple years or whatever, it definitely would be.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you want to like if that 9.4 is listed at 10K. I mean, I think you're gonna want to plan for like JP. What do you say? 9.8 is going to be in the 40K range at least.
Well, the one sold for 50. I mean, that one sold for 50 in 2012. So like, as according to Heritage, it was like 50 and some change. So like, I would assume it's going to be more than that. I don't know if
Yeah, I mean, I would. Okay, yeah. So yeah, like 50K is probably then your floor.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, like, I mean, if I start looking into it, and this person's asking like 100,000 for it. You know what I mean? Like that just it wouldn't be. That would be where I would pretty much be like, no, this isn't gonna be realistic or whatever. Maybe hope that the other 9.8 pops up somewhere or something. I don't really know, but yeah, like I mean, a 100% increase on it or whatever in 10 years wouldn't be. That would steer my interest from like pursuing that as hard as I would be or whatever, and then probably try to find somewhere at a 9.6 or a 9.4 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
at that point, but
no, I would be. I doubt it would be 100K. Just to be perfectly fair, like I would be shocked. Like I am guessing if there's a 9.8 X-Men 12 out there, like it's probably still fairly close to that 50K number is my guess. Like,
yeah, I don't want to cut you guys off, but I got to jump off.
Yeah, all right, peace out, JP. Yeah,
all right, Ryan. Nice talking to you guys.
Nice to meet you, man. Take care.
Yep. We'll see you later.
Yeah, so I would think, like, honestly, like the price of the 9.8 is going to be still fairly close to that 50K. That sale too. Like, have you heard of GPA?
No, I'm not.
So GPA is kind of like your Terapeak. It's
Okay.
and it's going to tell you can look. So if it is a subscription base, but it's only like, I want to say it's like $12 a month.
Okay.
You can type in X-Men 12 and it'll show you every grade of X-Men 12 and what the recent sales are. It'll show you recent sales, 90-day sales, where it'll give you the entire
Okay.
sales history of every X-Men 12 that is sold on eBay, Heritage, Comic Connect. For most of it doesn't show Instagram sales and it doesn't show Comic Link, but that data is who everyone uses for the most part to price books.
Okay.
So you can take a look and understand what the trend is and see what a 9.8 is trending at. And like that, versus using the one sale in 2012, GPA will be your more accurate.
Okay. GPA, what does that stand for? What does GPA stand for?
I can't remember. It's GP analysis, though, is basically what it is.
Okay.
But yeah.
GPanalysis.com would be like their website. It's just
yeah, I mean, if you just put in GPA comics, it'll come up on Google.
Okay, got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then plus, like, every dealer on Instagram has a GPA account. Because again, like I said, they all use it. So when you're talking to people, like, they'll have some knowledge. Like, yeah. But just like off the top of my head, like, I would still pretty much bet that I could be wrong, but I would bet that X-Men 12 is still in that 50K.
Okay.
If not, honestly, like, that could have been a situation because of that pedigree where the person that bought it was collecting that pedigree or something.
Okay,
there could be something isolated there that made it so high.
Yeah. So something specific to that collector or whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So GPA would be where you want to definitely check. And like, you could honestly like look. I mean, if you start talking to people, just ask them like, "Hey, I don't have GPA. Do you mind looking up this comic for me?" I don't have GPA personally, but like, you can ask like a lot of the dealers. They're all everyone on Instagram is like, the community side of it is great. Like, everyone's out there to help. And because, unlike cards, like I was saying, like, since there's always another comic and there's always another copy, everyone's very friendly and helpful in terms of finding something that you're looking for.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, whenever I get to that, I mean, like, maybe you can steer me in the right direction there on some of that, or like connect me with some of these people to where I can at least like start putting my foot in the door for it a little bit. I mean, like, you're talking about these dealers and stuff like that. Like, I don't even know who these people are. I wouldn't even know how to, like, I mean, obviously I would connect with them on Instagram, but like, I don't know like what their handles are, like how involved they are and stuff like that and whatnot. So yeah. If there's any help that you can do with that, or like, like, I think you talk about a guy named Dave on here a lot that you guys do some deals with.
Oh, West Coast Dave.
Don't know if that's like a person or whatever, but yeah, anybody that you can connect me with that would like start, that I can start, slowly whittling away at that would be nice. Cause that is like that's the next step,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. Any other questions on the comics?
No, I think that covered pretty much everything I wanted to know. But I'm glad to hear that you don't think it'll be as expensive as I'm imagining it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be cheap, but
yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So. Well, Ryan, this has been a ton of fun talking to you, getting to know you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Maybe we'll do it again sometime down the road whenever I have a 9.8 sitting in my house.
9.8, you'll have the gold 1 of 1.
That's right.
You'll have the entire Juggernaut shrine built out.
That's right.
It'll be perfect.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Before we roll out, why don't you just tell again, since you're looking for these things, if people know where they are, where can they find you?
Yeah, Supersized Rye on Instagram, supersized_RY. Ryan Beckner in the Facebook groups, and I think just Ryan Beckner on the Discords too. If you're in the Discords there, I don't think I've got the vintage Juggernaut logo as my AVI on there. So those are where you can find me. If you got anything that you think I'd be looking for, please hit me up.
Yeah, right on. And yeah, guys, I'll link Ryan's Instagram in the description. Check him out. Even if you don't have the cards he's looking for, check out his Instagram profile. I mean, like, you want to talk about dedication to a character, this guy's got it, and his collection is all there for you to see. So check it out for sure.
Awesome, man.
Otherwise, everyone, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we will check you out on the next one. Peace out.